I am not endorsing anybody to do that. I have no idea what the effects are. I've not looked into it, but I'm fairly certain there's probably not even a literature on having it that way. What's going on, guys? It's Jacob, Sunday Lifters. Welcome back to the channel, depending on if you've been here before. Today we are going to be talking about sort of everything ezetimibe. We're going to be covering off everything you need to know if you are thinking about using this drug, if you're just interested in it, whether you've sort of like heard a little bit about it, but sort of doing the whole scouring every video to learn what you can about it. This is technically episode 2 in my benign intervention series. Last time we covered metformin, which I will link up above. But yeah, let's sort of go into ezetimibe today, and we'll start by saying ezetimibe is just a medication that is used to treat high blood cholesterol, basically, and particularly LDL cholesterol. Research started in the early 1990s, and it was available for a prescription drug basically in the US about 2003, and I think in my country in the UK it was around 2007, but it could be a year either way, but it was around sort of, like you say, early to mid 2000s depending on where you are. It's prescribed orally in a 10 milligram tablet, and that is usually always taken daily. We'll cover off sort of like the people who are usually prescribed this drug. It's often teamed up with another drug, but we'll cover all that stuff later. I personally do take 10 milligrams of ezetimibe every day. I sort of did a video in the early days of this channel saying how ezetimibe was quite hard to get in this country, but after doing a bit more research on it and sort of exploring my options, I did actually manage to get a prescription. Having said that, I'd still say the video is relevant. I'd still say it's harder than getting SARMs or steroids, to be honest. So I'll cover off who it's for, how it works, how to use it, sort of results you can expect, and also the side effect profile in this video today. If you haven't already, consider dropping this video a like, a comment, or even subscribing. It massively helps the channel grow, and it is hugely appreciated. So this is going to be sort of the jargon heavy bit, guys, but this is how it works. Basically what ezetimibe does is it stops the absorption of dietary cholesterol through the small intestine, and what happens is that means there's not as much sort of absorbed cholesterol available for the liver cells to absorb, and so the liver cells pull more cholesterol out of your blood, your systemic cholesterol, and that's why it ends up lowering cholesterol. It like I say, it blocks off the absorption of dietary cholesterol, and so your liver cells have to pull that cholesterol from somewhere else, which happens to be the already existing systemic cholesterol you have available in the blood. Ezetimibe will actually block the critical mediator of cholesterol absorption, that is the Niemann-Pick C1-like-1 protein, or NPC1L1 for short, I believe. And that's sort of found in the gastrointestinal tracts, the GI tracts, epithelial cells. Ezetimibe also blocks aminopeptidase N, which is basically the enzyme that is responsible for helping you digest and sort of absorb peptides, which are short chain amino acids. Ezetimibe also interrupts a caveolin-1 and an annexin-2 complex that is sort of involved in the trafficking of cholesterol. I do apologise if I butchered the words there. I'm not actually going to go into what they are. One, because it's really complex stuff, and number two, the second part of that complex, the annexin-2, is actually a pleiotropic, which basically means it, depending on where it is and what time it's activated within the body, its function changes. So these are really sort of complex proteins, but essentially that's what they are. They're both proteins at their simplest form. In terms of the pharmacokinetics of ezetimibe, it's mainly absorbed by the liver, but a little bit by the small intestine. Ezetimibe is conjugated into its active metabolite, which is called a phenolic glucuronide, I believe. Or again, I might have butchered it, but it's something like that. Evidence supports that you'll get the most bioavailability out of your ezetimibe by taking it with sort of a sort of high fat meal, really, to get the best absorption. And if you sort of do the opposite of that and you take it when you're fasted, you can expect a much lower absorption, to be honest, a very small amount. Bioavailability for ezetimibe is estimated between 35 and 65%, depending on, again, how and when you take it. You're probably closer to 65 if you have it with your fatty meal. You're probably closer to 35 if you're having it fasted. The other thing to bear in mind with a ezetimibe, guys, is really you can only take it orally. If you really wanted, I mean, you could grind it down and potentially do it sublingually, or sniff it if you wanted to, do it like nasally, but I am not endorsing anybody to do that. I have no idea what the effects are. I've not looked into it, but I'm fairly certain there's probably not even a literature on having it that way. So basically, and I don't see why you would, so basically you'll be taking it orally in a 10mg tablet. So who is ezetimibe for? It's mainly prescribed to people, and it's sort of FDA approved prescription for people who have a higher level of cholesterol, particularly, like I say, LDL. That's the main one it affects. And the people who usually get prescribed ezetimibe actually have it as a tag-on to a statin. I'm not going to really go into what statins are today, but the sort of people who take ezetimibe on its own as a sort of prescription drug are usually biohackers, because they don't want to have the statin as well. But when it's usually prescribed in a mainstream way by doctors, it is usually teamed up with a statin. And what you'll find is, and the other sort of person who would get prescribed this by a doctor is anyone who has hyperlipidemia, like homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, or homozygous cytosterolemia, all of those kind of things, which all have such annoying long names, to be honest. But yeah, they're the sort of people who would typically get this drug. It's not as powerful as a statin, which is usually why it's teamed up with a statin, particularly in those who really need to lower their LDL quite quickly. You can expect around a 15 to 20% reduction in your total LDL by taking ezetimibe. So again, not a massive decrease, but 20% or 15% or even 10% is going to make, it can lower it a little bit. It's going to make a difference. When it comes to health, I'd say like small differences teamed up with other lifestyle sort of habits can make a big difference. There's no significant effect on HDL cholesterol, but in some studies they saw up to about a 5% increase. Nobody really noticed any significant decrease in HDL. So again, there's also that sort of side benefit to it. Again, 5% is not massive by any means. It's hardly a difference really, but small differences add up. So how is it taken? We've sort of covered this a little bit already, but 10mg orally is the standard. People who have sort of kidney disease or sort of mild hepatic dysfunction can probably still take the full 10mg dose, and it'll likely be fine. Again, I would discuss with a doctor, but generally I'd say you'd be okay. If you've got moderate to more severe hepatic dysfunction, definitely worth speaking to a doctor about the dosage before jumping onto ezetimibe. There's not actually that much data on taking more than 10mg a day. I did have a look, but I couldn't really draw up many studies at all. You could, if you're using this as sort of a preventative medicine like myself, you could take less than 10mg a day if you wanted. But the tablets you get for ezetimibe are very, very small, so it's like you could probably halve it, but when you start getting into quarters, you're probably just going to turn the thing into dust. Side effects, there's no major concern in my opinion in terms of side effects. That's why it's made it onto the benign intervention series. But what the main advantage to ezetimibe, it's not as powerful as a statin in reducing LDL cholesterol, but we do see some statins do seem to have bad effects. Like women in particular, there was a certain statins, I'm not sure if it was a fat soluble one or a water soluble one, but it seemed to be linked with the development of type 2 diabetes, which is obviously really serious. A smaller but more reported effect is like people experiencing brain fog on certain statins that perhaps, again, if they're fat soluble, would probably breach the blood-brain barrier. I'm just speculating, by the way. Don't take me on quote on any of this. I'm not an expert on statins, to be honest, at all. So I've been taking Ezetimibe now since October 21. It's now just coming up to February 22. So about sort of, I don't know, how long is that? 14 weeks or so, 15 weeks. And I've noticed no side effects whatsoever, to be honest with you guys. I first found out about this from Leo Longevity's podcast that he does with Derek from More Plates, More Dates and Vigorous Steve, and he said that you wouldn't even notice you were taking it, and that is absolutely true. I'm not saying that'll be the case for everyone, but again, I'll go over the side effects and you can see yourself unless you're one of the sort of very unlucky few who has a bad response to it. There's nothing that serious that can come off Ezetimibe use. So I'm going to list them off here. We've got common side effects, more than 1%, headache and or diarrhea. Uncommon side effects, 0.1 to 1%. Experience myalgia, which is muscle pain, and raised biomarkers on hepatic blood work. So that's blood work that's related to the liver. Hepatic, it always relates to the liver. And the rare side effects, which less than 0.1% of people experience off Ezetimibe, would be rash, myalgia, and rhabdomyolysis, which that is a bit more serious. That's sort of like where skeletal muscle tissue starts to waste away. So that is the most serious side effect reported in Ezetimibe use. But like I say, that is 0.1% of people who take it. The incidence of reported overdose on Ezetimibe is basically non-existent or rare, so there's really not a lot of data on it. But you can assume like an acute overdose will probably lead to loose stools, abdominal pain, and maybe a bit of fatigue as well. And finally, let's cover off the results. So as mentioned earlier, you can expect around a 15 to 20% decrease in LDL or bad cholesterol, and maybe up to a 5% increase in HDL or good cholesterol. That is it, to be honest, guys. Like, you won't really notice any major difference unless you get a blood panel done, a lipid panel, and you actually have a look at these biomarkers change over time from, before you started using it and then after a certain period of time of using it. I've actually done this myself. So just before I started taking Ezetimibe in October, I got my lipid panel done, and now sort of coming up to February, end of February, I'm hoping to get another lipid panel done so I can sort of show you guys in a direct comparison the effect it had on my blood, and my blood panel basically. Maybe I'll do a video about that. Let me know if you want to see that. I'll definitely put it as a post on my Instagram for people to view. So the takeaway, very useful medicine in lowering sort of LDL in terms of its risk profile or side effect profile, whatever you want to call it. It's very favorable. Yes, it's not as powerful as statins, but a lot of the risks that may be associated with a more powerful drug like a statin do not accompany the Ezetimibe unless you are a very unlucky and bad responder to the drug. Around 38% of American adults right now have a higher than recommended sort of total cholesterol level. It's safe to assume that a lot of the other parts of the Western world, particularly the UK, is not a million miles behind that statistic, which means potentially a third or over a third of the population of these countries could probably benefit from taking something like Ezetimibe, as well as sort of getting other things in check like diet, doing regular exercise, all the stuff we should be doing to stay healthy sort of naturally as well. Teamed up with the Ezetimibe, it could help potentially save lives. I'll be continuing to take Ezetimibe as long as my blood work stays favourable. Like I say, I will, aim to get the second lot of my blood work done at the end of February, so you guys can actually see the difference. But unless I see any like major drop in my cholesterol, I won't stop taking it, because again, having a low cholesterol, really low cholesterol, is bad in itself. It is a precursor to things like testosterone, so having no cholesterol available can be just as bad as having high cholesterol, at least for extended period of times anyway. I'm not recommending anybody do this. I'm just pointing out the potential benefits of it and the side effect profile. As always, I suggest you speak with a medical professional before you jump on anything. I'm not a medical professional, I'm just a guy who is into this sort of stuff. Thank you very much if you stuck with the video to the end. I hope you found it useful. Like I said earlier, if you haven't liked it, commented or subscribed to the channel, if you could, it would be hugely appreciated. You can also hit the bell icon to stay up to date and get notifications on new videos I'm doing. You can follow me on all my socials. It's at Sunday Lifters on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And you can email me at sundaylifters@gmail.com for workout plans, coaching and diet plans, and for any partnership inquiries as well. Thanks a lot for sticking around, guys, and I'll see you back here again very soon.